Good afternoon, everyone. So we would like to start our Tibet Awareness Talk series. Today we have here Ms.Tenzin Pema. She is a researcher in Tibet Policy Institute, Central Tibetan Administration, and her topic is on Tibetan language. So I hope you will have a good knowledge in Tibetan knowledge about the status and everything. Thank you. I would like to give a mic to Pema. Thank you.
Good afternoon, friends. It's immense pleasure for me to be here to talk to you since you are interested to hear, to listen things about the status of Tibetan language inside Tibet. And as introduced by my colleague, I'm Ms.Tenzin Pema from Tibet Policy Institute, and I'm doing research on the status of Tibetan language inside Tibet. And so far, I'm just going to share some of the information, some of the knowledge I have got through my research. So, as you might be knowing about, just a rough idea that this is the map of Tibet. Okay, and it consists of 3 traditional provinces, Ulsan, Kham and Amdo. So these are 3 traditional provinces of Tibet, and all the 3 provinces have their own dialects, which is called Ulsan dialect, Kham dialect, Amdo dialect, and there are many more dialects within the provinces, just say more than 200 dialects spoken throughout the region. But there is only one script, that is Tibetan script, the written Tibetan, which unifies the whole nation. All the Tibetans throughout the provinces. So there is got only one written script. So this is just what I have said just now. So to begin with, now as why the Tibetan language is important, why it has to be preserved, protected and promoted. So as you all people, you have your own languages, Russian or Spanish or French or whatever, German. So all these languages signify one's identity. So, there are many more salient features to every languages throughout the world. There are more than 6,000 languages. So Tibetan language is one of them. And some of the important features of Tibetan language, I'm going to just highlight some of them. As I said just now, it's the sole identity of the Tibetan people. Now we, the Tibetan people, we are known by our own culture, our language, or our religion, our history, and all these are deeply rooted in the language, that is the Tibetan language, so that Tibetan language is the sole identity of the Tibetan people. And secondly, as I said in the beginning, that it has got a unifying nature. It unifies the 6 million Tibetans, either he's from Ulsan or Kham or Amdo. It unifies, the Tibetan script unifies the whole 6 million Tibetans. Not only that, the Tibetan script is being used by around 10 million people, let's say even in Pakistan, and then here in Nepal, Bhutan, India, Mongolia, Russia. So there are around 10 million people, peoples throughout these countries understand Tibetan script. So it has got a unifying nature. And then thirdly, as it's not, there's no doubt that Tibetan language is the most reliable source of the Buddhism. So this is the only language which can explain Buddhism completely. So, now Buddhism, it can be, explained either from religion, also from scientific way also, Buddhist science, Buddhist philosophy. So all these are very much, important to this world now. As you may know that His Holiness, goes everywhere throughout the country, and he talks about Buddhist science. And recently he had a discussion with the scientists, and he is also a Buddhist scientist. So the whole science is there in the Tibetan language. And then it can be said that Tibetan language is one of the oldest Asian languages. So we can imagine, one of the oldest languages means, Sanskrit, Japanese, or Chinese, and then Tibetan. And it has got a history since from 7th century. So how rich this language could be. So this is also one of the reasons why the Tibetan language should be protected. And then it's proud to say that the Tibetan language has got high standard of language and its grammatical structure. Anything can be translated into Tibetan. The only thing that has to be done to the Tibetan language is it has to be developed with time, with more modern terminologies. This thing has to be done. Otherwise, it has got such a grammatical structure that anything can be translated into Tibetan. So these are some of the selling features of the Tibetan language, and these are the reasons why the Tibetan language should be preserved, should be protected, and then promoted. Now let's have a look to the current status of Tibetan language inside Tibet. As I said that the importance of the Tibetan language, but now how is the condition of Tibetan language inside Tibet under the Chinese Communist government? So let's have a quick look. The first one is no implementation of the provisions cited favorably for the minority languages. There are many laws in China, including constitution, and then national minority law, and then education law, compulsory education law. So there are many laws in China, but the sorry part of it is that these are not implemented towards the promotion, towards the preservation of the minority languages like Tibetan language. So the second one is dialects used in writing. As I've said in the very beginning, how many dialects are there in Tibet? If you remember?
200.
Yes?
200.
Yes, more than 200. 3 major dialects: Utsang dialect, Kham dialect, Amdo dialect. But there are many more dialects within all the regions throughout India, but throughout Tibet. But the problem at present is that all the dialects are being used in writing form now. So what could be the result? Is that the unifying nature which the Tibetan script enjoys, it's being deteriorated now. If someone in Utsang province, if he writes something down, he uses his dialect in writing, and this document cannot be understood in Amdo or in Kham. So this destroys the unifying nature of the Tibetan script, and this is also very serious problem. And then the Tibetan language is becoming valueless and useless. You just imagine that the French language is becoming useless in France. How it could be. Russian language becoming valueless, useless in Russia. How it could be. How the Russian people will feel about it. We can imagine it very clearly. So it is happening in Tibet. Though Tibetan language, is the main language, mother tongue of Tibet, but in order to earn livelihood, not only livelihood, it's a big thing. Just to have work done in bank or in post office, or just to have the seat number of the bus, everything is written in Chinese language. So it becomes extremely difficult for the Tibetans, who doesn't understand Chinese language. So not only in this social life, but also in education, in administration, Chinese language is taking place of Tibetan, and Tibetan language is becoming useless day by day. And the younger generation, they feel that, if they study only Tibetan language, there is no scope for them to earn good livelihood or to earn money or fame, name, whatever it may be. So the younger generation also get discouraged to study Tibetan, and in place of that, they opt to study Chinese language, and that ultimately, destroys the place of the Tibetan language inside Tibet. Okay, then Chinese language is mixed with Tibetan language. So this is very prevalent, especially in urban areas, in towns, cities in Tibet. If suppose there are 3 Tibetans, okay, the 2 are having conversation in Tibetan language, but they use Chinese words in their informal conversation. And if the 3rd Tibetan, if he doesn't understand Chinese language, then he won't understand their conversation completely. This is happening in the family also. There is communication gap between the elder generation and the younger generation, because the elder generation, they don't understand Chinese properly. They are not fluent in the language. But the younger generation, due to their schooling or in working in cities or towns, they are quite fluent in Chinese. So this brings communication gap between the generation also. So this is also very critical. And then the very sad part of the Tibet's history is that Tibetans cannot speak Tibetan nowadays. So this is happening for the very first time. Okay, fine. If a Tibetan doesn't know how to write Tibetan, it's okay, it's fine. It depends upon the opportunity whether he has or she has got, to study in school or monastery or nunnery. But not knowing the Tibetan spoken language, but it is happening in Tibet now. The Tibetans, they cannot speak Tibetan. They cannot understand Tibetan language. So this also brings immense, worry, anxiety, concern amongst the Tibetan scholars, or even the ordinary people also, that our identity is in risk now. So this is also very serious, mostly in the urban areas. And then this is very clear that there is no appropriate education center, institutes, schools or colleges in Tibet. The Tibetan children are not getting appropriate Tibetan education, and because of that, many of the Tibetans, they escape into exile, crossing all those dangerous routes in Himalayas. They are suffering a lot, but still they take their lives on risk in order to get better education in India or any other countries. So this is, extremely painful even for the parents also, that even though they want to send the children to school to get education, but they are having, they are compelled to have second thought that what they will learn in schools, what they will learn in college. And that second thought, gives them an answer that if they go to school, they will get education based on Chinese culture, Chinese history, or whatever it may be, and they are not going to get Tibetan education. And this discourages parents to send the children to schools and colleges. And because of that also, there are many, even in this 21st century, there are many illiterate youngsters. So this is also a very big problem, and since you all are here in India, you can have a look in the reception center, even the centers, children's village schools. There are many Tibetan children who arrived from Tibet in order to get a better education here. And then, as I said in my introductory part, that the Tibetan language lagged behind in modern terminologies, and this is very true. As I said, there are many languages in the world, more than 6 6,000 languages in the world, and right now we can say now English language, we consider it as the most advanced language. How it became language today? There have been the evolution stages. It has been developing year by year, and then all the people they committed to develop the language, and it has become one of the advanced language today. But it is not happening to the Tibetan language. It has been a very rich language, but it has not been developed with time. So because of that, the Tibetan language at present, it lacks all the modern technologies, which can be used in education or in, trade or whatever it may be. But this is what the Tibetan language is lacking. And then, as we have been now, we all are in a free country. We can access all the news or all the things, information from inside Tibet, that the lives of Tibetans inside Tibet are threatened. Only to speak for the Tibetan language or for culture, identity, and rights. If a singer, if he sings just something related, the matter related to the Tibetan language, he is imprisoned. If a teacher, he wants to teach his students the importance of Tibetan language and how to write and how to read the Tibetan language, he is fired from the job. If a student he says something to the authorities in the school or in the government that Tibetan language should be taught, he's also fired from the school. So there are many examples we have that the Tibetans, their lives are threatened even to speak for the Tibetan language, but still they risk their lives. So in a nutshell, we can say that in Tibet, the freedom of Tibetan language is lost. So this is just a rough introduction about the status of Tibetan language. And if we have time, then we can have a discussion in our Q&A session. Thank you so much. And all these schools, now Tibetan schools, they provide education in Tibetan. And the best example we have in Dharamsala, we have a modern school. That school uses Tibetan language as a medium of instruction. So all the subjects are being taught in Tibetan language. And we can estimate there are around 13 or 14,000 children, according to last year's statistics.
To modernize the Tibetan language, do you propose coming up with Tibetan words for these modern technologies? So there's two approaches. English has been successful, I think, over time because it just borrows words from other languages. Many of our words are from Indian or Sanskrit or German, Greek. They have their origin in those words, whereas languages such as Welsh and some Nordic languages will reinvent those words in their own tongue for things such as, Wi-Fi or mobile phone or those sort of things. What direction do you propose for the Tibetan language?
It's terminologies also, and because of this necessity, the Department of Education of the Central Tibetan Administration, they have started with a terminology project back in 2005, and they have come out with 5 glossary books, around 4,000 new words in Tibetan. So this is being done in exile also, and the more inspiring is that the Tibetans inside Tibet, let's say the scholars or the Tibetan linguists, experts in Tibetan language, they voluntarily met, and then they had discussion. And we have 2 examples. We have 2 terminology books we can have here in exile also the book that have been published in Tibet. One book, there were around 45 scholars. They met for whole 3 years and came out with 6,000 terminologies, new terminologies. That's also a big contribution to the Tibetan language. Likewise, there were around 50 scholars. They met for 3 years and they came out with 10,000 new terminologies in Tibetan. These terminologies are something related to technologies or the modern science, etc. So of course this is being done, but I strongly think that the project has to be expanded. It's very less now for 3, 4, 10 years. Only few thousand. It's very less. So this project has to be expanded. Yeah.
Now these new terminologies, are they?
They had programs something related with the quizzes in schools. So they started with a certain number of terminologies already published, and they distributed among the students, and they have to learn on this. And finally, they had quiz. So this one activity has already been done. I'm sure that this will be
Dictionary project,
Uh,
or is it various different bodies?
I think not yet. I think because I'm also using Malam dictionary, and some words I don't find in Malam dictionary, but I go to the glossary published by Department of Education. It's there, and then 2 other dictionaries published in Tibet. Yeah. Okay.
Is the Tibetan language, does it like resemble like other languages? Like is it like close to Chinese or to Nepali or to like in like structure, grammar wise or like vocabulary wise?
Yeah. Family, and then to narrow down, it's a Tibeto-Burman language family group. But so far, I do not agree to this exactly, because Tibetan language has nothing to do with Chinese language, neither with any other language, because it has root with the Indian script, Gupta script, because it started from India back in 7th century. So it has got nothing to do with the Chinese language as such, because Chinese language is pictorial. Right, they don't have certain consonants or verbs like which we do have. Even English also we have consonants and verbs and all those things. Likewise, we Tibetans also we have 30 consonants with 4 verbs. So it's completely different languages in total. Yeah.
Just a clarification. So last time I looked up, it says Sino-Tibetan language tree, right? When you look at the Asian language tree.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
what's the reason for that? I'm sure
Yeah.
you know more than me. I just looked up.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That when I have been looking into the Tibetan language more deeper, I come across all these language families also. So I'm yet to do deeper research or to write scientific article on this. But still, I have gone through some of the papers, and it has, most of the papers have said that it's not at all related to the Chinese language. It's a complete different language. So in near future, if time permits, I will look into this subtopic also, how and all these things.
Is there like an academic dispute about it, like the Chinese justify or like as a part of the occupation to get the culture and language as a part of the culture, like closer to the Chinese? Like is there a dispute or something, or like different opinions that are politically related?
Yeah, normally what we feel, as a general human being, now we all are same as human being, and takes at all, because it's our right, it's our basic right. When we are born as a French, we are born with the French language. It's a basic right. It's nothing to do with the government or any policy or whatever it may be. But in Tibet, under the Chinese communist government, it's very sorry to say that the Tibetan language is always related. Intentionally, take it as politics, I have many more examples, like the students, they protest against the authorities in their region only because that the Chinese, they promulgated one policy recently in 2010 in Qinghai province. So we have many Tibetan areas incorporated into Qinghai province. And now the Qinghai province, they have come out with a policy that all the schools will have Chinese language as the medium of instruction. And obviously the students were, they were heartbroken. They were, they felt very sorry. They were, frustrated that how it could be. Majority of the children in schools are Tibetans, and why they should be taught in Chinese language, and they protested. But there's no such changes. And in 2012, May 3rd, I remember very clearly, the next day we have got the news about Trinki's self-immolation. Why she self-immolated? Why she burned herself? Only because that, she was very enthusiastic in her studies. She was very passionate about studies. And she was very good in Tibetan also. But certainly, her school announced that the medium of instruction in our school would be, changed into Chinese language. And she was frustrated. She didn't find any other way, to appeal. And, her incident was, reported by Andrew Jacobs from New York Times.
How old is she?
She was only 20 years old at the time, in 2012, just imagine. And there are many more. There are 130 Tibetans who have self-immolated so far. And no less than 7 were related to Tibetan language. They want to have Tibetan language to be the medium of instruction in their schools. Tibetan language should be used. Tibetan language should be taught to the Tibetans. Their slogans, their last messages were simply related to the Tibetan language. So this also clearly shows the place of Tibetan language inside Tibet.
Yes. We were watching the film and it showed the sinetizing of the dances and the music and so forth. I have seen the sinetizing of the Tibetan language on news programs. They're speaking it in a sing-song Chinese accent. Are they also changing the words with this kind of fake Tibetan stuff?
The clip, something related to the Tibetan students in Tibet, they were protesting against the government, and those are the people, who have self-immolated. Regarding the words,
to distract from the immolations.
I'm sorry. Yeah. About the language, of course, there is Sinicization everywhere. Now, from culture, way of life, and as I said in the informal conversation also. But why the Chinese, what they show in their propagandas or whatever it may be, there are truly, what you call presentation which are not truly Tibetan. That we can understand. Even in the songs also, and the rhythm or whatever it may be, they are mixed with the Chinese language.
So in religion, you don't have Tibetans as majority anymore, right? There are non-Tibetans which are majority in rest of the provinces. So how do you go about implementing or asking the government for language? Do you want it as a second language? What would be the, what is the approach?
In China, the biggest autonomy is the autonomous region, which we have Tibet autonomous region, among 5 autonomous regions, and below that we have autonomous prefecture.
Yeah.
So we have 5, 6 autonomous prefectures in Qinghai province, Sichuan, and Yunnan and Gansu. So we have our autonomous prefectures, and below that we have autonomous counties also. So in the laws, including constitution or national minority law, there are certain provisions provided to the minority nationalities. either in the autonomous region or in autonomous prefecture or in autonomous county. So all these should be taken care of, like according to the law. So there are certain rules also, there are certain regulations even in the autonomous county like Pari, in the autonomous prefectures like Malo or Tholo, Golo, in Qinghai, and then in Sichuan we have Karze and Ngari autonomous prefectures. So all they have their own rules and regulations. But the problem is that I just left my conclusion that there are many laws. Tibetan language is protected by law. There is no question. There is no doubt about it. It's protected by law, but it is neglected in practice because those laws are not implemented towards the preservation, protection, and promotion of the Tibetan language. Yeah.
How can new technology, is there opportunity there for people to learn in their homes rather than in schools? Or, I don't know very much about the technologies.
You mean to say the terms related to technology?
No, using
to teach Tibetan to the Tibetan people, but the problem is, I'm not sure whether all the Tibetans can afford to have all these technologies at home. As I said, the Tibetan language is losing its place in Tibet. If someone learns, Tibetan language at the PhD level, but it becomes difficult to get a job. So, nowadays, long time back, we had very, very happy stories because, all the Tibetans, they were either nomad or farmers and they can't survive easily. They don't have to earn from outside. They can have, what you call exchange barter system, from grain to milk products, etc. So they don't have to have money in hand. But right now the world, as the trend of the world, Tibetan people inside Tibet also, they are changing and they need money. They want to have, the life which is being enjoyed by other people, other human beings outside Tibet. So in order to have money, they have to work, somewhere in the society. But the society is dominated by the Chinese language. So this discourages the younger generation, to study only Tibetan language. They study Chinese language, at the same time they try to learn Tibetan language. But the sad thing is, I recently met a man who arrived in January this year. He was from Yunnan province and he's studying in Sara right now. So he came from Yunnan province, from Dechen, Tibetan region. And he said that, in Dechen, in Yunnan, there are no Tibetans. If he's not nun or monk, there's no Tibetan who knows Tibetan language. The language, whole part, it has been sinicized. And 1 year ago, I came across a writing written by Bill Hinman. Yeah, he works. I think he's from Australia. I guess so. Yeah, Bill Hillman. Yeah.
Ben Hillman.
Yeah, something like that. So he works and he does a big project in Yunnan province. Yeah, and then he has written a kind of mockery. He said that there is one beauty clinic. Okay, beauty clinic. Now the ladies or even gentlemen, they go to the beauty clinic. But in Tibetan language, the beauty clinic in Tibetan we say zeso kam, right? Zeso kam. Ze means to beautify. Okay, to beautify the place where the beautification is done. So in Tibetan language, the spelling was wrong. It becomes leprosy clinic. So the Tibetans, the Chinese government, they are very clever to promote tourism, especially in Yunnan, saying that it's Shangri-La, right? So it's promoting the tourism in China, and then everything, they're trying to they're trying to show the Dechen as a very cultural entity, though it is not. Something, Tibetan's written, and the Tibetan traditional dress, Tibetan food, just to attract tourists. So, but the reality is that, the Tibetans cannot speak Tibetan, Tibetans cannot write Tibetan. So this is also same in Kaze also. I often go to a Tibetan reception center to meet new arrivals, and I talk to them. And during that time, in January, I met 2 girls from Garze in Sichuan province. They cannot speak Tibetan. So how sad it is to have a translator between 2 Tibetans. Yeah, and even the radio broadcasting also, they are, blocked many times. They have to change their, place everywhere.
Frequency.
Yeah, their frequencies. So. But still, I must say, I must highlight that the spirit of Tibetan people inside Tibet, it's very high. We receive so much of inspiration from the Tibetans inside Tibet, how they struggle in their day-to-day life. We are free in these free countries, and our situation is not, not even though it's not very good, but still. They're having, struggle every day. Yeah. Anything you want to know? Yes, please.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Because I lived in China for many years.
Okay.
So I traveled to, I didn't go to the Tibetan areas.
Okay.
So I was in the Middle East. I traveled to many poor areas.
Okay.
And I found actually many places they just don't have enough money, resources, or trained teachers. So is that one of the problems, that in the Tibetan areas they just don't have enough trained teachers who speak Tibetan?
Their laws, they already have laws. If they implement them properly, then naturally, why there is a problem of having good teachers, enough number of teachers to teach Tibetan? Because they are not having problem with the Chinese teachers. Why they are facing problems with Tibetan teachers or Uyghur teachers or Mongolic teachers? The only reason is that they are not implementing the laws, right? So they are not providing those opportunities for the minority nationalities to develop, to use, to study their languages. So those minority languages are always sidelined because of the dominant language, and this is the only reason. And long time back, if I share one thing, that there was a wonderful regulation passed in 1989 by the Tibet Autonomous Region, and during that time there was, if I don't know whether you know him or not, he is called Panchen Lama. He was there during that time, and we had a wonderful law. And in order to have, in order to experiment that law, whether this could be implemented or not, and they started with the, experimental schools to teach only, Tibetan language. And after 6 years, the result was wonderful. The percentage of the students who passed and the marks they got, it was, it cannot be compared with other students who studied in Chinese. But the reason given by the Chinese government was, now we cannot afford this. We cannot, we are not. We are having problem with the perfect bilingual teachers, and then these schools have to be closed. And finally, the 4 schools were closed in 1996. So it's similar now, as I've written in my, opinion piece recently, that now new law is coming into Tibet Autonomous Region in September in order to protect the Tibetan language. Now my argument is why this law is necessary, because they have already two revolutions in Tibet, one passed in 1989 and one in 2002. Now, why this new law is, needed? What new thing is there, in this law? How this could be implemented,
Is it a bigger problem in the rural areas? Because I'm working at Tibet Charity right now. And I asked my students, did you go to primary school or did you learn your English and oh.
Exactly. In rural areas. So sometimes this is very surprising to see all those, statistics and annual reports and all those things produced by the Chinese government. There are, number of schools. They don't even have schools. So when I come across Tibetans who are coming from Tibet, whether they have school in their village, some say that they have they call it private school, but it's not private because in a village, just suppose there are 25 families. They arrange one house, right? And then they they provide all the books or whatever it may be, and their village children, 10, 15, 20, how many number, so they are given just a very elementary education, just alphabets, and writing their names or signature or whatever it may be. But the Chinese government even count this as a school. So in that way the number increased. But in reality, I talked to a boy who visited his family very recently, and he came back, and he hails from a village in Usam, from Tingri. So I asked about the situation in his village, and he said that the children from his village have to travel the whole day to reach the school. So because of that, now since the Chinese government they're implementing the compulsory education law, right? So because of that, it's compulsory for the parents to send their children, otherwise they would be fined. So the parents, they send their children in the boarding schools. They have to, and they cannot meet every day. So this also makes distance between parents and children, and the children also, they are very very small at young age of 6, 7. They are sent far away from their parents. So it also harms the proper development of children also. Yeah. I don't know whether my answers, you are fulfilled with my answers or not, but
Very much.
As a token of appreciation, we would like to give her a scarf.
I didn't expect this.
Actually, it's a bi-monthly talk series. You can join anytime. We have twice a talk per month. So after this, we have small refreshment over there. You can join there.
Thank you.